Good. All right, so now we're recording. Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Can you guys see from your perspective whether we're recording or not? Or is only I can see that? Okay.
All I can tell you is that we have a record button on the bottom of our screen, but when I click on it, it says that I have to ask you for permission. Oh, no, wait a minute. No, in the top left, it did just show up recording.
Okay, guys, so you can see it. So so I appreciate it. That's good that you guys can remind me when to record. All right, so let's get started if it's okay with everybody. So the first item on our agenda is the review and approval of the minutes from March. I'm not sure if Tracy was there and Mary definitely wasn't there, but Terry was there. Terry, did you see anything unusual about the meeting, about the minutes, or they look okay to you?
No, they looked okay to me. I would make a motion that we move to accept the minutes as written.
And do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Good, thank you. So we'll accept those and send those off to Grace to be posted to the website. The next item on the agenda is we have a request for a new member, Mary David, to join the committee. Mary is on the Conservation Commission, so I'm assuming she's representing the Conservation Commission, which is which our original charter always included someone, but we haven't had anybody from the commission for a while. Mary, why don't you say a bit about yourself?
So hi, I'm Mary David. I live over here on Lake Wyola. My family has been here for over 30 years, and with my granddaughter now, we're on the 4th generation of enjoying the beauty of the lake. My background is nursing. I was a nurse, and I'm now full-time at the lake, retired. I'm trying to get to know and give back to the community a little bit.
And how long have you been on the Conservation Commission?
Since the fall, I think
okay.
October.
Oh, good. All right. Are you enjoying it?
I am enjoying it, learning a lot.
And they meet a lot.
Yeah, they got a lot going on right now.
Which reminds me, first let's finish up this item first, but let me write this down so I don't forget. So I think if it's okay, we'll have a vote to have Mary join the committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, and aye, so it's unanimous. Very good. Welcome to the committee, Mary.
Thank you.
Not on the agenda, but related to this, related to the Conservation Commission. We've been invited to join the Conservation Commission to review the new tree cutting regulations that came down from some organization, I'm not sure who. I'm not sure the dates, but I'll send an invitation to everybody on LWAC to join that Zoom meeting. You may have already got the invitation, I'm not sure, but if not, I will send that out. Mary, do you know anything about, are you familiar with at all that what that means involves?
Yes, so there's been a lot of discussion lately about trees and tree cutting and, are people getting permits or not permits and what exactly are the rules around tree cutting? So this is really just to clarify when people have to apply for tree cutting and clarify the policy a little bit more.
Good. I know Donna West is the president of the association, is going to be joining that meeting, and I'll definitely be joining it. And so looking forward to it.
Great.
Quick question, Mark, how, or maybe it's for Mary, is this something that's like open to the town, this meeting, or like, how do you know? Well, Mark, I'm guessing you know about it because you're the chair of LWAC, but like, how are other people going to find out about it?
So Conservation Committee is an open meeting. That anybody can join. It's an open public meeting, all of their meetings. It's on the calendar for the website.
I guess what I'm asking though is specifically this tree cutting piece, like how would people know that this tree cutting piece is on the agenda if they wanted to attend for that reason?
I think the answer, Tracy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, is that unless you're
The agenda's on the meeting notice.
I think you could, unless you're watching the agenda, you probably won't see it, but I think you can sign up to receive the agendas from any committee. Like I get the select board agendas regularly. If there is no active way to reach out to everybody, it's really kind of a passive way unless you sign up to get onto the agendas. But they are open like this one, anybody can attend.
We're also trying really hard to put everything on on the website, the Conservation Committee website. So documents and things that we're looking at, so people can also look at it there.
And I will send out to the time and date of the meeting. So I'll just forward the invitation I received, and I'll send it out to all of LWAC later on this week. So that should be good. A nice meeting. It should be interesting. All right. Let's see here. Item 3 on the agenda is the select board letter that we wanted to send off regarding the stormwater runoff committee. Last fall, we wrote a letter to the board, select board, requesting that a town committee be formed to look at runoff around the town, stormwater runoff specifically, and specifically, but not to the lake. That letter seemed to have been misinterpreted, and it was determined that it was thought that the letter was asking for town resources to work on the roads of Lake Wyola, and that definitely wasn't the case. So Catherine and I formulated another letter, which I think I sent you with the agenda, and so I'd like to open up the floor for any comments or suggestions if you had a chance to review that. So the idea of this letter was just to add some clarification. Does anybody have any recommendations or suggestions?
I thought
that go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So Mary, why don't you go?
So I thought the letter looked good, and I think it's well needed.
Terry, you had a comment?
I thought that the letter was well written and addressed things, you know, that's been discussed for a long time. I know that when I first joined LWAC, that there was issues that were brought forward with work that was done up above Shore Drive, involved, you know, on Wendell Road, that there was concerns and with clearing and roadway runoff from those roads, and so I think that it pretty much summarized everything that's necessary. The runoff and then the pollutants and contaminants or whatever that go into Lake Wyola, the Lake Wyola watershed extends way beyond just what the association roads are, and that to think otherwise would kind of be short-sighted on or not, you know, that the town shouldn't be just blowing it off. I mean, there's a lot of from what I see, a lot of runoff that's coming into the off of Wendell Road, wherever there's culvert crossings and stuff. So the town has some obligation to work with us, and I think the whole thing, you know, over the past 10 years, as we've talked about this, is that for there to be any significant amount of help to address anything directly around the lake, is that the town and the Wyola Association and the residents around the lake need to be part of a partnership so that there can be grant applications that are put in through the Franklin County Regional Council of Governments. Otherwise, it's, you know, the Lake Association can only do what it can do. But I think when we got our report this year, they're spending 35 to 40% of the dues amount that are collected have historically been spent on road work. And to do anything beyond that is not really realistic. And everyone around the lake is a taxpayer of the town. So the town needs to step up and help us with their contacts and the resources to be able to address these issues appropriately, beyond just it's the association's property and let them deal with it. Because when you look around town, there's a lot of roads that need attention, and there's a lot of culvert crossings that are public roads that lead to the same issues that everyone points fingers to right at the lake roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
So, oh, Mary, you want to go first?
Yeah. So, so I agree with that. And, you know, being here full time now, I have to say, just looking at what's gone on Shore Drive over this winter and spring, you know, I do think there needs to be some consistency in what we're doing, because just filling the holes with the dirt that they provide that washes out the next time it rains right into the lake, it is not really, there's got to be a better solution to how to maintain the road and a consistency, because right now everybody that goes out there does something different to do to the road.
So I would say everything that I've heard to this point from both Terry and from Mary, I'm in complete agreement with. I know that Terry put forth a plan a couple of years ago for consistently grading. I think it was a 3-year cycle, and I know the roads committee had done that as well. And actually, maybe it was with the consult of Terry. I'm not really sure. I have a document that expresses that, but that doesn't seem to be going forward, because at the LWA association, at least when I was on the board, felt that that wasn't an obligation of the LWA. So I feel that if the town is to partner with us, LWA also needs to, be stepping up with what they're doing with like a plan and an agreement that's official. and it's in writing that this is what they do and this is what they can't do because of lack of funding and because of impact from what is happening to roads surrounding the lake, the LWA roads. The other thing I wanted to mention, and Terry, you might know what this clause is. I can never remember it. It's something like if then but or something. What my understanding is that it means is in the Wetlands Protection Act is that like the Conservation Commission is responsible for monitoring what happens within 100 feet of the lake unless something that's happening outside the 100 feet is affecting the inside, which of the wetland, which I think is what you were sort of talking about, Terry. And I don't think that the Conservation Commission, and they've actually said to us when we were going there for a plan with for Pine Drive a couple years ago, that they just did not have the people power to really address, you know, any that area. And so it seems to me that that might be a good argument for another committee, that the thing that we're asking the town to do. So my only suggestion about the letter is that we sort of really talk in a more positive way in it about a partnership, like start the letter out with that. Like, this is what we're interested in doing. We think a partnership with, you know, and we could even say Conservation Commission, land use, what kind of power that would give to collectively solve these problems. That's my only idea for revising the letter. Otherwise, I think, you know, its points are good. I just feel like it might be reworded a little bit.
We did say in a second paragraph, the second sentence is our request is not for material assistance in maintaining privately owned roads, but rather for a collaboration between the town and the lake community to find appropriate solutions to the problems caused by road water runoff that threaten the health of Lake Wyola. So we do specifically ask for a collaboration between them. And
yes. Maybe taking out, we think this response is not quite to the point. Is that necessary? It's just it sounds like a negative introduction to the letter. That's what has bugged me. But yeah, if it started out with our request is not for material, you know, that sentence, I think it might be better.
Okay, but how about if I move that, I'll move that first sentence up to the previous paragraph, so it ends the paragraph, because I really want to address the idea that they really just ignored the point of the original letter. We weren't asking for money. We weren't asking for anything from the town other than we were asking to form a committee, and I think that's historical bias that's reflected in that comment. So maybe what I'll do is, if it's okay with everybody, I'll take a look and just maybe move a paragraph around because I really like to get this out to the select board and not wait until the next meeting. I think I can change that without really materially changing the letter. If that's okay with everybody.
Mark, one thing is I mean, not to be critical of any thoughts or anything, but I mean, this has been going on now since November, and people have had the opportunity to comment. The select board hasn't been very proactive in addressing that. I think the point of the letter overall is just that we want to meet with you and discuss this. So however the letter's worded or changing things around, it really, our point is we want to get before the select board to be able to discuss it with them, and you know, maybe some of those clarifications are just appropriate if we can get before the select board. Because we've had about 3 meetings now where this has been on the agenda, like, you know, revisions to the letter. And if we keep doing that, then we might lose the opportunity with the upcoming lake season for the association and people in the association to be able to participate in this. You know, the annual meeting's coming up for the association, and then in August when the next meeting is. So if they push us off, if the select board continues to push us off, we'll be having the same conversation next year.
On that note, would it be okay with her? Oh, go ahead, Dave, Mary.
So I think I don't have a problem with the letter the way it is, but I think you should also send it or have conversation with the Conservation Committee. I'll bring it back, but because they also have been talking about this same issue. And I think we're actually inviting Donna to the meeting to talk a little bit more about what gets done, because it's been brought to their attention too, in the aspect of protecting the lake, that this is a constant problem. So,
I'm totally comfortable sending this to the select board and the Conservation Commission, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, and I just want to say that my only point in trying to soften, and your idea to put that up in the first paragraph, I think is a good one, and I think we can just do that right here, is for the goal of getting the select board to let us come in front of them. I agree with Terry, but for there, if we have to kind of put on the super nice to get in front of them, because they put us off where even when we wanted, like last year, we never got in front of the select board about that other issue with the beach. with
Yep,
the-
no,
like,
you're right.
put us off. So if we have to kind of, excuse my language, kiss butt a little bit, then maybe we need to do that. I don't know. And
Maybe we need to not be nice to them so that so things get stirred up and that they have to put us before the select board. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It seems like they only want to hear things that they can fit into their agenda. And when it comes to the lake and an issue this is an overall problem that, ultimately they're going to pass it back to the Conservation Commission to look at. But how many miles of gravel roads are there in Shutesbury? 18 or 20 or something like that. So, it's a big idea. So but the whole collaboration idea is that it's not just pinpointing locations on Lake Wyola that are an issue. Is like the town could be proactively pursuing grant opportunities to address stormwater runoff and culvert issues on 18 miles of gravel roads. Some of them being Lake Wyola, some of them being the, public roads. And that is going to be a more successful approach through the Council of Governments and through anything that might be available through the state than if we just say, okay, we want to replace this catch basin on Lake Drive. We're looking for, overall the town needs to be looking for $250,000 worth of revenue to support this, not 5,000.
And I do think that the letter, because it talks about the intersection of public and private roads, I think that that's kind of, it does seem like we're talking about just Lake Wyola. And Terry's right. We can't be if we want to have a larger collaboration. So I don't know. And I also agree with you, Terry, that this, putting off.
But that's where that's where the Conservation Commission comes in the town, because we're only the Lake Wyola Association Advisory Committee. So that's kind of like where our limits extend to, right? Is basically, I would say, the watershed of Lake Wyola.
That's true.
But the other 18 miles of gravel roads in town, that kind of falls under the Conservation Commission and probably the Highway Department and other people involved in town government that would care for those roads.
So maybe what we should be doing is going to the Conservation Commission first, and then they would have more of a voice to then go to the select board. Might that be a better avenue? Maybe we're just going.
But I would rather go with the select board first, or both, actually. I like Mary's idea. And the reason why is because we sent the select board a letter originally in December. And so this here is a follow-up to that letter. Kind of to say what we're trying to say here politely is that their response was inappropriate to the December letter. And so where you say the idea here is that their conclusions they reached were incorrect, and that we'd like to get together with the select board and have a verbal conversation.
Okay. Well, then I rescind my suggestion for change. I don't care at this point. Just send it the way it is. If I seem to be outvoted anyway, so.
Well, no, I could do either way. But let's leave it like it is right now, and if it's okay with everybody, and I'll send this off, and then we'll try to get we'll see what the response is, and I'll push a little bit harder. I'll also send I'll send this letter to the Conservation Commission. Mary, do you want me to send the original letter that we sent to Select Board in December so that you guys see the background? Is that appropriate?
So I think you should send both letters and ask Tessa to get on the next agenda and then to talk about it.
Okay, all right. So I will send both letters to the Conservation Commission and see what we can, and ask to get on the agenda. Good, all right. Maybe I make a note of that. Okay, good. All right, are we all set with item number 3? Okay, let's move on to item number 4, which is an update on Locks Pond culvert repair. I can address that. I have no update. I've been in regular communications with Becky. She seems she hasn't been able to give me any information, and I don't think Walter has any information. I talked to the police chief; she has no information, or not police chief, the officer in charge, Kristen. And so, the only thing I think I can do is just keep pushing on Becky to. She seems to be the gatekeeper of the information. I know it's going to occur this August kind of time frame. At least the last time I heard it was this August, and the dam, the road by the dam will be closed for about 2 to 3 weeks, and there's already plans to how to route traffic around. This occurred at a meeting that I attended to probably 6 months ago. But beyond that, I have I'm unable to get additional information.
Mark, there was some confusion. There was some confusion over, I think, the correspondence that went out from Becky I guess I was just interested if the job actually went out to bid yet, and she seemed to indicate yes, it did, and then came back and said, oh no, that was like the school roof project or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's right. She was originally confused, but I have to believe this went out to bid because it went out to bid a long time ago, but I don't know that for a fact.
okay.
So I don't know where it stands.
The only thing that I can say is, if my memory serves me, it was Walter that seemed to know like a whole lot about this project. Has anybody reached out to him?
I did, and Walter and I attended a meeting with the engineers that were the company who was doing the design work, but that was a while ago, and neither one of us have got additional information since then.
Okay.
I saw a presentation that they had put together about what was involved. So a lot, there's definitely stuff out there. I just have to somehow get to the right person, or somehow get Becky's permission to go around to her and go right to the engineering company and see what they have. And I may just do that anyways, because I have the information about the engineer who was working on it.
So I haven't seen anything lately about it, although I do know that there was a lot of concern about that they wanted to do it in August to have time to get it all done, but to push back the closure till after Labor Day, since Labor Day is a big utilization of the beach. There's a lot of people up here. That's usually after Labor Day, it kind of shuts down. So I don't know where it stands, but that.
Well, it's interesting that they have to, that a notice of intent has got to be created for this project to go forward, and so the Conservation Commission has to file orders of conditions, and that I don't think has happened yet, because there was a number of things that were supposed to happen simultaneously with this with the culvert repair, and that was the work on the dam, because the dam needs has some leaks in it that need to be patched. And we wanted to move the leakage monitoring weir, which is down below the dam, and move it to a more appropriate location, which is just a few feet away. But that's all got to, a notice of intent's got to be filed for that, and I take it hasn't been filed for that yet.
So I'm
So
not,
it's not sounding like the job even went to public bid if the Conservation Commission hasn't issued an order of conditions yet, because that's something that would have to be incorporated into Mass Highways bid specifications.
Maybe you're right, Mary.
stuff might have happened before I joined the committee. I know Conservation Committee went and looked at all the plans and did a site visit and worked on it. I'm not sure the exact status because that was all kind of before I joined the committee, but somebody should be able
Yeah.
to give an update on where
There should be a DEP. There would be a DEP file number for it in the conservation records, right?
So I'd also send a request to Tessa, to the Conservation Committee for an update, for a request for an update. And
Okay, good.
work it that way.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. It's a good idea. Thank you, Mary. Anything else on that subject? Okay. Item 5, update on the goose egg addling permit for 2021. I filed the application and we got the permit like usual. Fran American has went out and he's been looking for nests. So a couple of weeks ago he hadn't found any. And so he just, and so what happens is if he finds a nest, he'll oil the eggs, and which prevents them from hatching, and just kind of keeps the population of geese on a manageable level. When at the sort of end of the spring or in the middle of summer, I then send a report to, I guess it's Fish and Wildlife, Mass Fish and Wildlife, which says, how many nests we found, and usually it's only one. So I'll take care of that. So it's just kind of just a routine thing that we always do. Any comments or questions? Good. Item number 6. This is the status of the state park safety plans. We discussed this 2 meetings ago. I met with, or talked with, and physically meet with, but I talked with Kristen Burgess, who is the officer in charge. Since we don't have a police chief, I think she's she's the officer in charge of the police. And she is planning to meet with the state park management and try to get together some kind of forum where we can, where maybe a state park management, but definitely the police and local residents can, get an idea of what the plans are and what we can expect. She's also looking into or trying to find information on lifeguard staffing levels and things like that. She seemed very optimistic, but I'm not sure if she's going to hit it, if she's going to be effective in getting the information we're looking for. But I can contact her and see where that stands. So my goal here is to get a meeting together with local residents, state park management, and the police to just to say, this is our plans for the year. This is what everyone can expect. Comments, recommendations, suggestions?
Well,
The only thing on that, go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say that last year, clearly things were a little bit crazy because of COVID, and they were really struggling with how to try to keep a number of people down and all that, which, based on this past week's CDC information, it looks like that didn't really matter that much because outdoor transmission is almost nil. But they did have an environmental police officer there pretty regularly, and I walk my dog over there all the time, so I got chatting with him. And he told me that, and he said he was there to monitor the beach, the people on the beach. And he said that there were no issues. He hadn't experienced any issues. He said that the issues that he's experiencing is all the boater violations that he was seeing with the speedboats. So they might be the people to talk to, because they were there like pretty much every weekend, and he seemed to think there was no safety issues. As far as numbers of people in the septic system and so forth, that's really a Board of Health thing. I mean, we had an issue with that, but and the lifeguard issue. But as far as like just the people, no, nobody was doing stuff that, like, no, he didn't see use of alcohol and, people doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
This originally started up in 2019, which was a busy year, and that's when the park was really overloaded, and the parking was overloaded. Last year wasn't so bad because everyone was staying home for the most part, so it wasn't a big issue. But this year it looks, I would not be surprised if the state park has much bigger crowds this year, and so I'm kind of pushing this from the perspective of what happened in 2019 and not what happened in 2020, which was a slow year.
Well, one of the things, Mark, when you have the meeting is if you want to control what goes on at the beach and in the parking lot. Last year, all of the state parks and our boat access sites and everything were overwhelmed. The governor, secretary of environmental affairs, everyone's standing up on stage telling the people to go to the great outdoors, as there was no staff at the places that they were being directed to go to. So most places were overwhelmed last year. The environmental police were overwhelmed last year at all of the places that they cover. But if they want to control really what goes on there, the town needs to control the parking along the road and prohibit people from allowing parking in their yards. And that's something that can be done locally and doesn't have to involve the environmental police and all of that. So it's kind of goes back again to the town as to the interest that they take in this. Because when a state facility fills up, I just drove by Sugarloaf Mountain parking lot. It's loaded, overloaded right now, as I'm literally right here right now, with people, a lot of them being out of state and everything. And that's just the state of all of the state facilities across the state, because they're being, everyone during COVID was told go out, hike, get out into the outdoors by the governor and everything, but not realizing that these staffing issues. I did try to make contact and look into the DCR lifeguard program, and it currently stands in the same situation that it was last year, that the training for the lifeguards, a lot of public pools where they do the training, and the folks that do the training don't have access to the pools. So I wouldn't anticipate that you're going to see anything differently in terms of lifeguard staffing unless the town is proactive and says and demands that there be lifeguards there. I mean, there are lifeguards that are certified who work for the state, but they've been redirected to other state facilities. I know that the lifeguards that work at Wyola, they're out of the Worcester region, believe it or not, and they cover the campgrounds that are up in Winchington, Otter River State Park, and there's another big lake and campground up there. So they move people around. But the simplest thing for the town to do is when that state parking lot fills up, have all the vehicles towed off of the town road and make sure that there's no parking and tow-away signs along the road. And that'll take care of a lot of issues up there. Because the way DCR handles the beach, I have to believe that if you were to read into anything, about like how many lifeguards you need per person, like per population on the beach, that it's way in excess of what they have for lifeguards because of the overcrowding that comes from when their parking lot fills up. And I know from when Evan worked over there that they only keep track of the number of vehicles that go in. So if one car pulls in with one person, it's counted as one. If a school bus pulls in with 50 people, it's still counted as one. And no one keeps track of the numbers of people actually on the beach. So,
Mark, can I just step in here on that, Mark? So a couple of things that we did find out. So first of all, I want to say that I'm right on board with everything Terry said, because the parking situation, what Catherine explained to us last year, as far as when they built the facility, they based it on number of parking spaces for cars, and they accommodated for a couple of buses. I don't remember exactly how many. I do remember that they estimated 4 people per carload, and then a certain number of people per bus load. And that's how they designed the septic system, was based on that. I do also know that, because Rebecca was a lifeguard there, my daughter, they would try to use a clicker to count the walk-ins. But the problem is that they have no jurisdiction to say you can't come in because you're a walk-in. They have to, because it's a state facility. It's, they can only charge people for parking. They can't charge people for admission. And in addition, they can't reject people because they didn't park. So the only solution to that is exactly what Terry's talking about. But I will also say that April told us that the select board decided that they couldn't have any control over the private people allowing people to park in their lots. So that's the guy on the corner of Locks Pond and Lakeview, which he gets a ton of people. He has an adjacent property that he parks them on. He takes trees down to fit more. The other property where it was happening was over at the Carries, behind the Carries that are right off of Lakeview, like corner of Merrill. But that is the town property. Like, they were actually using the town sawhorse and putting their $10 sign on it. But I understand that was nixed because he was letting them park on the town property, not his property. And so I think we should check and make sure that that's like definitely nixed, because what my understanding is that Becky has brought back that whole town access from that spot. And there's a couple parking spaces, I guess. I think there's only supposed to be like 2 or 3 parking spaces on that town slip for people to, like, if they want to bring a kayak or canoe. I think it's a boat launchy thing. I haven't actually looked at it. But those are our issues. Like, why can townspeople let people park in their parking lot, in their property, to walk in, and we have no control over it? And yes, we have to tow. They need to tow. I don't even think ticketing is a good idea. I think they should just make an example out of some people and just tow. That's all I have to say.
yeah, it's a funny thing. If your daughter, if she worked over there, like, and my son, it's a funny thing. The park staff is one thing, and they take control of the parking lot and collect the fees and stuff, but the lifeguards don't have the same supervisor as the park staff. And so the lifeguards are responsible to someone that's out of, who covers multiple areas
And they never hardly
in
meet.
Worcester, and they don't see them. And so then when there's issues there, but to me, it's like, okay, when the parking lot is full, that's it. Like, walk-ins onto the beach or whatever, you wait till other people leave. And they do that at other state facilities. I mean, that's just how it works. Is like, I was yesterday I was with a watershed ranger over in Hubbardston at Asna Comet Pond, where there's a state park beach, and then there's a boat access parking area, and we had issues where people, the overflow parking from the beach was filling up the boat access, and so they were asking for more signage and different things. But you know, that was it's the exact same scenario over there, and it's just kind of like, well, when this fills up, it's closed, and if people want to come, then they have to wait until someone leaves.
So Terry, I think that if we can get in touch with those people, because I was specifically told last summer, because they literally had a sign out there that said no walk-ins, no drop-offs. And you'd drive through there and there were people dropping people off everywhere and walking in. And so I said, why aren't you following this? Like, why do you have the sign out here if you're not doing it?
They don't have any enforcement authority.
Yeah, and so I asked the cop that was there, why can't you
Yep.
enforce? He said, my job's just to
Yep.
stay here. This was a statey. This wasn't yeah, it was bizarre. But the other thing is just they pay the staff the staff like the all the maintenance folks and all that more than they pay the lifeguards. So it's not a very big incentive to be a lifeguard. I also really feel pretty strongly that we can get Walter in on this push with the select board, to not just sort of say, oh, we have no control, we can't do anything. Because a few years ago, there was a major issue where a kid was drowned. He was not breathing.
Yeah, we don't need to have a medevac. We don't need to have like a fourth year in a row where medevac's coming to Lake Wyola.
Kids, the lifeguards were so lucky that one of the lifeguards just happened to catch that this guy was hanging on to the rope and then he was gone. But there were so many people in the water, they weren't really even quite sure where he was. So it took them a while to find him. And, you know, part of them felt like, well, maybe there really wasn't anybody. But sure enough, the kid was not breathing. Walter showed up and they had to bring him back to life, basically. I mean, that's how bad it was. Walter can tell you. And it shook a lot of lifeguards up because they didn't feel backed up because there's way too many people at the beach for them to keep an eye on. And they got to see how easy something like that could happen. So.
Yeah, there was two incidents that year, and then with the medevac copters, and then there was one the year before that, because that what you're talking was the year that my son was a lifeguard there, and then he decided that that wasn't for him because of the, you know, kind of the whole scenario, like those young kids are put in very awkward situations, and then the staff has no enforcement authority, and the state police are happy to sit there and collect $80 an hour on overtime in their vehicle with the air conditioning, but not really get out and pay real close attention to the things that are going on. But
yeah,
I think the town could be a little more proactive itself by not letting, setting a precedence right early at the beginning of the season of not letting on-street parking and has the authority on the public roads to say, hey, there's no walk-in, based upon what we've heard from the Board of Health that the system design, but again, there's no like, on the town's part, Walter's doing a great job, and the police are doing what they're directed by the Board of Selectmen. But like, there could be more done, I think.
Yeah, I think from
by local enforcement.
The Board of Health angle, I think, is a big one because they're supposed to monitor how many times that septic alarm goes off, and Rebecca told me it goes off all the time. They have to shut it down and not let people go in. This is a couple years ago, granted, but still. So there's something, clearly the septic system is showing over too many people. And Terry, if some way we can get in touch with that town you were talking about that has a state beach where they're keeping the walk-ins from going in, like what do they have an ordinance that makes that?
Well, no, this is just the DCR rate. DCR has its own, there's the environmental police who enforce, they're responsible for all types of boating the boating regulations, the everything in the state park. But DCR has its own ranger force, where they don't have the authority of environmental or state police, but they have more authority than the average state park worker, we'll say. and stuff. And so they do have that. And the gentleman that runs the ranger program for DCR his name is Mike Nelson. And, you know, and just having those people swing through too once in a while. But, you know, the overall feeling when I spoke with, 2 years ago when I spoke with the park supervisor over there, you know, his feeling was, well, the beach should just be like the national park. People swim at their own risk. So if you have that philosophy, and that's your park supervisor's philosophy, that's what gets relayed back to the people that could actually make decisions to help change things. But if that's the philosophy, you know, I think part of that comes from he doesn't like the idea of putting 16 and 17-year-old kids in uncomfortable situations with adults that act like idiots sometimes, and, you know, in awkward situations and stuff. But if the idea is we'll just let everyone swim and it's unguarded at their own risk, the place be out of control. And we've had that 1 year now, and if that becomes the norm going forward, it's going to be a huge problem for the town.
Okay,
Okay.
where do we stand? I'll push back on Kristen and the police and see if I can keep, you know, get her to take the lead in some of this stuff. Now, what else do we?
I'll send you Mike Nelson's email address. So maybe if the town reached out to him, and he runs the ranger program, they're aware of this. I've tried to bring it up numerous times with the environmental police and DCR staff, so they're aware of the issues at Lake Wyola. It's just a matter of, you know, I think if the town was the one reaching out to them for how this, you know, could be effectively managed, that it would maybe go further than private individuals.
Okay, sounds good, Terry. So what I'll do is I'll push forward from my end here and you know, see what happens, and hopefully before the next meeting, Kristen will have some action taken. All right. Anything else on that subject, Terry? Tracy.
I just have one more thing to say. I just, that town ordinance idea seems like a pretty good one to me. Like, is there a way that we can get, you know, vote, obviously town meeting this year, we'll miss out on it, but that we can get it, an ordinance that says you may not allow people to, you know, charge people or allow people to park for purposes of walking into the state beach if the parking lot's full, the state beach parking lot's full. Seems like pretty simple, and it seems like if we were to, you know, we'd have enough backup to express the dangers of what's happening with that we could get the townspeople to vote to say yes.
I'll push that through. I'll talk to Kristen about that too. Now, hopefully, I'm hoping that we can get a meeting together with with residents and LWAC in the town, and just just have a plan. We'll see what I can do. And if you guys can have any ideas, that'd be great. I'll make sure I'll give Kristen his lead here on the on Mike Nelson, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, just one more thing I want to say as far as the select board goes. I was looking at the select board, like, I guess you can't just pop in on their meetings, open meeting wise. It's a little different than ours, but there's a beginning, I think, question and answer period. Might we just get a little more aggressive and like just I'll show up on the Zoom and say, hey, this is us. This is what, you know, I don't know. Maybe after this letter goes out and if we don't get any good response, then we do something like that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Tracy.
So let me get this letter out, and then we'll be more aggressive depending on how my discussions with Kristen goes. So and how what response do we get to this letter, and then at the next meeting, we can then decide to be able to decide what to do from a more radical perspective. I know the select board, when April was the last time April was had a meeting, they were pretty much focused on the town meeting, getting ready, prepared for the town meeting, and I think the solar farm issue has kind of consume their entire bandwidth. But that doesn't mean we still can't push these things. All right. We also have that subject. All right, so the last item on the agenda is items that cannot be reasonably anticipated. Anything else? Any other issues or items that you guys would like to bring up?
The only issue that I have is the fact that, and I don't know that, I mean, I know that all of us, we live here at the lake, so we could have some influence. This isn't necessarily an LWAC issue, but town meeting and LWA's annual meeting are scheduled for the same time, same day. And they're doing the solar vote at this meeting, so it's kind of a big one. And I don't know, clearly we can't get town meeting to move. But maybe I don't know, what are your ideas about that? Because it's kind of a problem.
What time is the town meeting?
Morning.
Okay, so they're both the same time slot.
Okay.
Um,
The town meeting is at a different, so LWA's time, and well, based on the bylaws, they have to have it like, I think it's the second weekend of June or give or take 2 weeks. That's their bylaws. So they could move it. Town meeting was scheduled because I talked to Becky. I was like, it was scheduled because of COVID. Normally it wouldn't be this late, but they can't do it inside. So they moved it later, but they did schedule it in January. So it's been out there. So, I'm guessing LWA didn't check because there's never been a conflict before, but there is this year.
Does Donna know about this?
I just realized it yesterday.
So what I'll do is, if you mention it to Donna, I'll send her a note, her and George, a note saying, by the way, and see, maybe I don't see why they couldn't change it.
They'd have time to do it now. If they wait too much longer, I think they have, I don't know what the bylaws say about a notice of the meeting, but I know the agenda has to be posted 2 weeks beforehand. So maybe that also could include change of meeting date.
I will send Donna a note, and if you see her, Mary, either Mary or you see her, maybe mention it. But I'll send her a note.
The other thing that'd be beneficial about that is that I think didn't the Lake Wyola Association, I think they had, in the past, they've had the police come and some town officials have come to the first meeting in June usually, which they wouldn't be able to do.
The first meeting the first meeting is Zoom, Terry. The June meeting's Zoom and the August meeting's going to be outdoors. That was what they got authorized by, I guess, the Board of Health, right, Mary? So I don't think that's not an issue for the June meeting, unfortunately, because there's no need for police at the LW.
So there was no, I didn't know if they had any type of participants though that were gonna, typically they do from the safety standpoint, just kind of to kick off the year, but it would be hard if they were both at the same time.
Yeah.
No, but
that's a good point.
that the LWA meeting is Zoom. So
No, but Terry's point, Tracy, is that historically we've had the Board of Health have a question and answer period, and the police have a question and answer period at the LWA meeting. And whether it's Zoom or in person, they wouldn't be able to do that if they're participating in a town meeting. And so that's, to me, is a good justification for changing the time and date of the LWA meeting.
very good point, especially if Donna's already got that planned on the agenda.
All right, so I'll send a note off to Donna. Anything else?
The only thing I wanted to bring up, Mark, and I know you're aware of it, but a little over a month ago, my dad and I were out fishing on the lake, and there was a individual that came out of the public boat ramp, and they swamped two little kids in a canoe. That I'm pretty convinced that those kids might have been in real serious trouble if we weren't paying attention, because there was no other boats on the lake. No one really had their boats in at the time and stuff. And the people, it bothered me because the people then that swamped these two kids in the canoe were hanging on for their life, and the water was about 55 degrees. They couldn't even yell for help. And so I think that the safety committee needs to remind people, you know, of their responsibilities as boaters on the lake. And I know in the past, I mean, we all think that we live on the lake and we're the good boaters and that, but I think what Tracy mentioned with the environmental police is that we're, you know, people that live on the lake have a tendency to not always be the best of boaters. But this individual came in from the public ramp and stuff, and so I don't know if there was follow-up. I did let the environmental police know of what happened, so I don't know if there was follow-up to the family whose kids were rescued, and then the activities of the boaters that were involved. They didn't even realize that they capsized the kids, and they were about 100 yards away from where these kids were hanging on for their life. And they were tied up just drinking the rest of the time. So it was kind of unnerving for me, to say the least, is to observe this, to be part of it and stuff. And I just think that, I mean, fortunately the kids, they had life jackets on. They weren't life jackets that were appropriate for their size, but they probably did save their lives. But anyways, just, I think that the association really needs to try to, they've talked in the past about, you know, we had maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, the boating safety class held at the association hall by the environmental police. It's free. It's open to anyone, and that we've talked about that, maybe trying to set something up once we can at some point in the year, and try to offer that again at the association. But it could have been a really bad situation.
Okay.
And I would like to just jump in on that too. Two things there. So last year I did ask that environmental police officer if there was such, I said, I've been told that you guys don't have enough staff to have somebody here monitoring this lake, but why are you able to be here all the time this particular year? And he said he agreed, but he said that he was too old to go out on the boat and it needed to be a young one. It was kind of a funny conversation. But point is that they were able to put somebody there at least every weekend, the environmental police, but sitting in the parking lot looking at the people on the beach rather than being out in the water. The other thing is that I know that even with that police, the resignation letter from the police chief, one of the things that was highlighted in that joint letter between the select board and he was that he had revived the police boat. But where is it?
Yeah. Well, it was being used. I don't know. I can't speak for last year, but 2 years ago it was very active. And it was very active out on the water, especially around the state beach and stuff. I know when my son was out, when he was lifeguard over there, I mean, they would see it out during the week quite a bit and stuff. And I guess one thing that I've learned through my work is it's a little bit, the training that is involved for police officers to be on those boats, and enforce Chapter 90B boating laws, that there's specific courses that they have to be trained in. But the environmental police are doing a really good job with working with local police departments that are willing to participate and send officers to that. So we did have an officer in Shutesbury that came from a different town, I think South Hadley maybe, and he had that training, but I think he's since left. He was there about 2 years ago. So they did have, and so that might be one of the reasons that the, you know, in terms of you know, the town being able to use that boat, is because it involves some type of on the water trainings. But the environmental police train, you know, the local police that are willing to do that.
All right, so just thinking about, we just also received some correspondence from the town that they're putting together a committee to decide how they're going to handle the Shutesbury police. It sounds like they're, like, from what I derived from, they're considering, you know, having alternate functions, you know, for funding. You know, maybe not even having a police chief, that kind of thing. So maybe this is the time to hit them up with, you know, how about this become a priority for the department, because we don't really need, you know, it's not like there's a lot of crime in town. We don't need the police, you know, out in their cruisers cruising around town. If we can maybe divert some of the funding, because that's kind of what defund the police really means. It doesn't really, you know, they don't explain it very well, but it does mean like changing what they do with the money and making it more appropriate based on your individual needs as a town or a city. So I think this, to me, this is a priority.
What I can do is when I talk to or email, and I will email Kristen, I'll mention that and see if there's if there's a possibility they can get some training from the environmental police and the appropriate boat safety.
Yeah, I'd say what it is, it's referred to as 90B training, and it's on the water. I mean, there's certain things like, you know, is to, you know, as you can imagine, being on the water and, you know, dealing with boating situations that are totally different than if you're standing on solid ground and you have a police cruiser to, if you need to take people into custody or anything like that, or, you know, and just how they do. So, but it is something in shoots at the time where 2 years ago, where they were active with the boat out on the lake, there was an officer that, like I say, there was an officer that had that training, because he had, I think he had come from South Hadley, but I think last year he left, and stuff. So Walter would probably know about that, and there might be people, they do, I think Walter's part of the, like the search and recovery, like the dive team, and they do similar, there is, you know, similar for fire personnel as well. So,
yeah, and Walter does that
the,
annually with them. I've seen them doing it. He keeps that up really well. So we do have that. Walter's the, you know, thank God for Walter. We have that backup there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of the boat, I can, if you want, Mark, I could give you the, I had coordinated before for that training about 8 years ago by the environmental police at the association building. Unfortunately, it was like a really hot day, about 95 degrees and no air conditioning in there. But the training is an all-day training, and they do have a program that, you know, it's free for people to go and they get their boating license and stuff. But that, you know, I think the association has done that in the past about every 10 years or so. So I'd be willing to try to, you know, make contact and try to set something up, you know, through the association, to try to make that happen again.
Good idea, Terry. If you could
And one more point, I know that we're going a little long here, but one more point about, so we're talking to LWA now and their boat, so their safety card. one of the things the guy, because I had just told the guy that I was a member of Lake Wyola Association, and he said, "Oh, is that the organization that produced that card, that red card?" I said, "Yeah." I mean, I never paid much attention to that card because I don't have a speedboat. But he brought up there's a section on it, and I've looked at it since the whole thing that it needs to be removed. I think about like Chief Harding says the boat courtesy, and then the 3 levels of the lake with the swimmers, the kayakers and canoers, and the speedboats. Like he said, you really shouldn't be having something on that card that's not Mass State boating law because it skews the actual rules, which are listed on the left of the card. And I will say that last year, and maybe it was just, we haven't had our annual meeting yet to review the minutes, but George is on the safety committee, and I was not at the annual meeting, but I did talk, the first one, and I did talk to somebody who was, that it got into the minutes that was the state boating law, the 3 circles, which isn't. It's Chief Harding, who's not even here anyore's idea of boater courtesy. So,
But those might play into Tracy. Shutesbury has its own bylaws related to boating on Lake Wyola.
yeah, and the bylaws reflect, I've looked at them, the bylaws reflect the state boating law. I mean, that's like, and they can't, the town can't supersede the state boating laws. They can't make up their own. The only thing they can do is make them more stringent. They can't make them less stringent. I got that directly from the environmental police. So I think that might be, because it does make it seem like the speedboats have more like the right of way, and then everybody else is supposed to look out for the speedboaters. So I just think that I think we shouldn't have anything on the safety card at LWA that isn't actually boating law, because we get ourselves into this gray area where we don't have the authority to do that, because we don't really have any authority in terms of the safety at the lake.
Well, I think this is probably a more appropriate discussion at the annual meeting, and then revise, and if appropriate, revise the card at that point. All right. Anything else? All right. All right. So I'll do my thing as far as getting off to the select board and to the police and to the officer in charge. And I'll send a note to Donna about both the conflicting dates, and I'll work on the minutes, and we'll get those ready for the next meeting.
Is there anything else you'd like to delegate?
I'd love to delegate. Are you kidding me?
Give me something to do.
Sure. Okay. All right. How about you contact Donna?
All right.
About the dates, the conflicting dates, and see what we do about pushing that off. I'll take care of the select board letter because I've already started that, and it's just really a matter of sending it off. But I'll copy everybody, and I'll copy that to the Conservation Commission. I kind of already started the process with Kristen about getting together a meeting with the park management and local residents. So I kind of feel like I should still drive that one a little bit farther. Was there anything else that's I can think of that we talked about? Terry's going to look into classes.
Yep, I'll take care of the boating classes. I'll look into that, and if you do coordinate a meeting, Mark, with the officer in charge and the people at the state park, I'd be willing to participate in that.
So would I. Yeah, I would too. And I think that Terry and I both have some background with our kids being there, so we can speak to some real, life stuff.
Yeah, my intention, if we get a meeting together, I'm going to kind of get everybody involved as much as possible, and the association members and the town residents. The people who live around the lake. this all started because people were complaining about the safety issues and people walking on the streets, and the streets are too narrow and parking. And so
I wonder if it'd be appropriate to invite them to the annual meeting of the association.
invite who?
The state park, as part of the public safety topic. And that would be another.
Yeah.
I know they would have to zoom in, but.
Well, I mean, I know that for, it might be kind of short notice for this first meeting, but I know, and then, of course, August, we're getting into the summer, but I mean, if worse came to worse, if we could get them at the August meeting, that's actually going to be outdoors. That'll be a little more personal. I know.
Or we at least establish some communication and see if the association would have a couple members of its safety committee attend the meeting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's the association, LWAC, and the officer in charge, and the poor people from the state who'd get an earful.
Then someone would contact the state park manager and see if he or she is willing to have some conversations.
Yeah, I would be willing to do that, but I just need some clarity on, are we talking about them coming to the LWA annual meeting Zoom, or are you talking about them coming to a meeting, the meeting that you're trying to set up with all those other people, or both?
Well, I think maybe to start would be to try to start at the meeting that Mark is trying to set up.
Okay,
And Mark, then just as kind of like an introductory, here are the issues that we've been, bringing up to the town, that the town's been dealing with, that the Lake Association has, members have seen, and this is what we see going on at the beach, and why is it this way? And then if that is somewhat productive, then maybe they could come to the August meeting where it's open, and we'd have a sense at that time as to have they made any improvements. And I would say invite the park supervisor, but also the lieutenant for the state park ranger program.
Derek, do you know who that is?
Mike Nelson is his.
Okay, so
Mike Nelson.
So we want to invite, somehow, last time I was involved, talked to the state park manager at the time. He was really unwilling. He didn't really want to get involved in anything that would. Yeah,
Steve Hubbard.
Yeah, he doesn't really want to get into this stuff, so he needs to be told he has to get into this stuff. So we have to go above his.
Yeah, I think we just need to go right to that program's been built up a little bit over the past about 4 or 5 years because of all these types of issues. So maybe just trying to coordinate a meeting with Mike Nelson and let Mike Nelson reach out to the state park supervisor and tell him he needs to be there.
Right. That doesn't sound like something I should take on. I can't even keep the note. I think it's great. You're just saying, Mark, that you've already started it. You're going to do it. If you come up with anything that you need to delegate, like smaller things that would be helpful for you to, have somebody else just, some housekeeping things or whatever, call on me.
Great, appreciate that too. I appreciate it very much. Okay, are we set for today?
I think so.
All right, everybody go put on your sunscreen and get some vitamin D.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion. So we're ending the meeting at 11:24. All right, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you showing up. So we have a quorum, and our next meeting will be let's see here. It would be. Oh, there's a problem with the next meeting. It's May 19th. Yeah, I may not be here for June 19th.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta check my. I can't check my schedule from here, but I'll let everybody know if it's possible I'll be out of town.
You can't do it the weekend before because that's June 12th and everything's on June 12th.
We may not want to do it the 19th anyways, if the association moves its meeting.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, maybe we should just hold off. Yeah, let's,
Well, let's see, we'll hold off on, we won't put a date yet, but we could maybe push it to the 26th.
Okay.
So I'll make a note to figure out a date for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
okay, great.
Okay, everyone enjoy the nice day.
Yeah,
We'll
you guys well.
take care.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.